Welcome to the Stanford MBA two-generational wisdom bridge across 30 years. I'm your host, Catherine Keogh McLennan from the MBA class of 1995 of Stanford. In each episode, I bring together one of my classmates, now in our 60s, give or take, and a member of the class of 2025, now in their 30s, give or take, and about to graduate into an entirely different world than we graduated in 1995. Back then, we finished our MBAs just as the internet was emerging. Today's grads are stepping into a future shaped by artificial intelligence, uncertainty, and we hope that we express possibility. These conversations bridge generations, share lessons, and spark reflections on leadership, life, and what's next. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Bruce McNamer from the Stanford MBA class of 1995, one of my classmates, and Batu Demir from the class of 2025. Bruce is a philanthropic leader who has spent his life weaving together business, government, and global development. He's currently president of the Builders Initiative, part of Luke's Walton's Builders Vision, where he steers capital and grants toward environmental and social change. Before that, he led TechnoServe, drove strategy at JPMorgan Chase and McKinsey, served as a White House fellow, and even worked as a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay. Bruce brings a rare mix of heart, systems thinking, and real-world impact to the conversation. Batu is a second-year MBA student who was born blind and is now charting new territory in both AI and accessibility. Originally from Izmir, Turkey, he's worked at McKinsey, Google, and startups like WeWALK, while also competing as a professional blind soccer player. At Stanford, he co-founded the school's Disability Club and has been a vocal advocate for designing technology with inclusion in mind from the start. Bruce and Batu explore how leadership, opportunity, and systems change intersect across 3 decades. We talk about building markets for good, AI as a tool for empowerment, and how each generation, Gen X and Gen Z, views risk, meaning, and purpose. It's a deeply moving and often funny conversation across space, time, and values. Hey, I'm with Batu and Bruce. Batu, where do we find you today?
I am actually on the Stanford campus, and I live still in the GSB residences, and so this building probably didn't exist when you guys were here. It's the new one, Jack McDonald. Yeah, so now we didn't get to meet the legendary professor, but we get to live in the building that's after his name. I don't know if you guys had the foam parties. Yeah, so Tuesday evenings, they have the Taco Bell version of it today. Yeah. I think there is a Taco Bell around the bay that's like by the beach. I forgot the exact location, but the classmates go there. It's supposed to be like the nicest Taco Bell in the world.
Bruce, where do we find you?
I am in Chicago. Our offices here in the West Loop, the so-called West Loop of Chicago.
What are you up to on a typical Tuesday for Bruce?
Nothing typical, but let's see. This morning, well, I did drop off because I have a son and came into work, and we had a management team meeting this morning, and then I spent a couple hours, not 8 to, I often go on site visits. There's a lot of it. I'm in philanthropy, and was to a really interesting kind of real estate project that we're developing in a neighborhood in South Side of Chicago. So just got back, and my Jimmy John's sub really quickly.
Bruce, so it's philanthropy and construction. So tell us a little bit about it, because I saw that and I was trying to work it out.
Well, what we do here is a little different. The context is pretty different because I've been involved in philanthropy and nonprofits in different ways, but it's different here in that this is a family office, and this is Lucas Walton's family office. It's called Builders Vision, and the whole idea is many pools of capital here for investing and for grant making. whether that's investing in, different asset classes, venture capital, growth equity, and the like at market rate returns, or in public markets, or in funds, or in concessionary investing, or in grant making. It's all aligned for good. It's all about shifting markets and minds for good, and right capital to the right need. And so we can take on a range of things. Most of our focus is in climate. So we work across the office and are thinking about healthy oceans and sustainable food and agriculture and the energy transition. But we're also Chicago's our home. So we try to, make a difference here.
Have you been with is it the Walton family, or has that been for a while, Bruce?
I've been here for 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
We moved here 5.5 years ago I'd been in Washington, D.C. for about 20 years before that.
Were you in Washington before Stanford?
No, I into Stanford immediately from Paraguay. I'd been a Peace Corps volunteer there. So.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Coming back to me.
Precedent for.
That's right. And Batu, Bruce did a joint law degree and business degree at the same time. How many, Bruce? How many other people did that?
Our year, maybe 10.
10?
Yeah, which was unusual. Because I think the year before there'd been 4, and the year after not many, but we had a kind of a spike. And it was curious. I don't know if people still do it.
Yeah, Batu, do you know joint law degree, business degree?
I think there are at least 5 people I can think of now, but I'm sure there are more. I probably don't know all of them even today, as we have a month left till graduation. Some of them, I think people are at different places. Like some of them are doing their MBA first. Some of them have started or like finished their JD already. And I think there are some people who did their JD in a different school and are doing their MBA now.
So, Batu, tell us a little bit about it. Before we were recording, you were telling me that you grew up in Turkey, and are you going back to Turkey? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess I can give a quick background.
Please. Yes, please.
I was born and raised in Turkey in a city called Izmir, which is in the western coast of the country. For those who don't know, I just described as Turkey's California. So like similar weather, similar vibes. It's more like SoCal, I guess, more than Northern California. We don't have the Bay Area. We don't have all the innovation.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that is different about me was that I was born blind. And growing up, it shaped my childhood in different ways. But I think there were a few things that were pivotal in my life. One was that in Turkey at the time when I was born, 2 things were really popular. One was playing soccer, and the second was biking. And at first, I wasn't able to do both of those. And I was like, oh, like all of my friends are doing it. Like, what am I going to do? And then I also have an older brother who's also blind. And so he and I started sort of like collaborating together to like find different ways to be able to do the same things. And for the soccer problem, we ended up coming up with an idea that if we would put the ball in a grocery bag and tie it up, and so it would make a sound when it moved, and we would be able to like chase after it. And then the peers would also want to play with us because it didn't really like change the dynamics or the rules of the game. And for biking, we ended up developing methodology. I guess we didn't develop it. It exists. That's how, so it's called echolocation. That's how bats navigate because they also can't see. So you basically make a sound. As humans, you can make a sound with your hands, like snapping your fingers or like clicking your tongue. That the tongue is easier if you are biking. And so like the way that the echo bounces off of the walls and the obstacles, you can kind of tell if there's an obstacle in front of you or not. And so this is not perfect. I wouldn't go on a highway, but it's good enough to function in a neighborhood that I'm familiar with. And so I think that I'm saying these were pivotal because it taught me that one, like I didn't have to sit at home and cry, and I could just get out and try. And 2 was that I was developing these crucial skills that now I can sort of like sell in my MBA experiences, like resilience, problem solving, innovation. So all of these I sort of had to do from an earlier age because I was forced into it. But I had so much fun memories. Like,
yeah. Where's your brother, too?
He now lives in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I want to come back to that because it reminds me, Bruce, as I get to know the 2025 class, it strikes me they're way more creative than we were. I don't know if you took the course that might have been 2 terms, but it was all about learning how to manufacture and then sell and I can't remember what it's called, but the project was bicycling lamps thing that they had to set up at Stanford, and it looks about as creative. I don't know. It sounds like you didn't take the course first.
Creativity in business? Can't remember, but I didn't. But I remember because I was there so long, there was also another cohort that did coffee cups. So you'd make a better coffee mug. Yeah, they had to do the business. They had to do the business plan, but then they had to go and like mill it or whatever you do. So, yeah, before.
So I'm going to jump back and forth, but Bruce, 5 years with the Walton family, but prior to that, Washington. So what was going on in Washington?
I left business school, law school, business school in '96, and I stayed in the Bay Area and worked for a while. And I think Batu, you were at McKinsey. I worked for McKinsey for a while, and then I went to Washington for what I thought was going to be a year to work in the Clinton administration, and then I stayed. And I worked in startups. But then the real answer to your question, Catherine, is because I've been around business and I've been around international development and working in poor countries, I got a chance to run an organization called TechnoServe, which took those and put them together. It was like, business solutions to poverty. So I ran the TechnoServe for 10 years based in Washington, and it was working in Africa, working in Latin America, India. We were in about 25 countries, and we had a lot of McKinsey alums, in fact, a lot. And it was like, how do you take people typically in poor agricultural settings and help them identify markets, aggregate product, think about the customer, the quality, access capital, and global supply chains, whatever it might be. And so that was why I was in Washington, why I stayed I always thought to go back to the Bay Area. It's so beautiful. Like, go back there. And just kept not going back because this work. And then I stayed and got into philanthropy, first corporate with JPMorgan, and then I ran the community foundation for Greater Washington. So
Wow.
life's funny, you
Hey,
Yeah.
Batu.
Yeah.
I have a question for Bruce. Where and how did you meet your partner?
Online. To answer your question, I didn't get married till 7 years ago. So I was single.
Fantastic, Bruce.
Yeah.
And so you have a child, Bruce, just
Boy, yeah.
6-year-old. Oh, fantastic. Oh, they're so cute.
You met her right before you moved from DC to Chicago?
That's right. We met, and part of the appeal for this job, coming to work for Lucas, was like, this would be an adventure for our little family, right?
Oh, Bruce, wonderful.
Girl.
But this is God. You guys have so McKinsey before business school. Is that where
Yes.
you were? Were you in Turkey with McKinsey?
Yes, I was in Turkey.
Okay. So what was Stanford? Why Stanford?
I think when I started working at McKinsey, I'll give you the dry answer and then I'll give you the personal answer. And when I started working at McKinsey, I think that was a typical career path still. I guess it was, that you would go on and do an MBA. Though I will say it's becoming less and less common because the consulting companies are realizing that if they let people leave, they don't come back. So now they're incentivizing people to stay and be promoted without doing the MBA. I think in the US, they even have a program where like you do 2 years as an analyst and then they promote you to become a manager. Where like if you do your MBA and go back, you can't go back as a manager, you go back as an associate.
So you're coming to graduation. What are you going to do afterwards?
Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure that out. I wanted to work in AI, and I'm still looking for a job, looking for the best opportunity. I have the option to go back to consulting, and I feel like if I can, anyways, we'll see. I hope I'll find the best opportunity, but I feel like it's a difficult period of time because maybe you guys can talk to this, but until today, things were linear. Like it was a binary decision. Like which college did you go to? What's your first job right after college? And then which MBA program you wanted to do, which for me, Stanford was like when I was looking at different schools and programs. I have this philosophy in life that like, if I'm making a decision, I try to make that decision with my heart and my mind. So like I look at both, and my head was like, well, any MBA program is going to be great because they're all great. And then my heart was like, well, like when I look at the websites and just like without talking to anyone else, just read the websites. The only one that makes my heart rate sort of like fasten is the Stanford website. And so I was like, okay, it's going to be Stanford. And I only ended up like applying to 2 schools, and Harvard wasn't one of them. I guess I was fortunate and lucky and to get into Stanford. But I was going to say like, this is so I feel like it can be, the career path can be linear until the MBA, but then post MBA, it's really not linear, and you have a lot of agency. I guess I hope to say you have a lot of agency on how it goes and shapes out. But it's also scary because I don't, yeah, because I don't know which career path is the best one, and how, like, if I go into a career path, can I go back? Like, do I want to live? So there are a lot of open questions.
Bruce, in your memory, but our class generally either went to the consulting world, the investment banking world, and then a few were entrepreneurs. And we were just hitting the internet. 95 was when the first, it was called Netscape at the time, went public, listed. So we were not at the same as you guys are at AI. So Bruce, what do you remember at this time deciding where you're going to go?
Well, you're right. I think many fewer, just this is my impression, like went, there we were, right in Silicon Valley, right? Was even then like a hotbed of entrepreneurship, and, it seen waves of entrepreneurship of various kinds, from semiconductors to the personal computer to, PowerPoint. But like, I think we were a lot more conservative. I think we did, to your point, we went into the safer routes, thinking I think many of us, might be a route from that to entrepreneurship. And then there was the internet boom, and we just saw like this whole set of people make this move. And I remember like a senior colleague at McKinsey saying, they're all leaving and they're going to want to come back in 2 years. There's going to be anything here for them. And he was not wrong. And then you had a generation of, I went to .coms. Like I did it there. I was in a .com doing business development for Varsity Books, like.
Oh, you did?
And it was a pretty massive displacement of people who sort of went to tech, but it wasn't really tech. It was .com. And then that all wiped out, and there you were in tech. And then what did you do? So I think there was and some of those people though, they did great and they're still around and good for them. But I think for many, it was this much more I hadn't worked at McKinsey before, but I'd worked in banking before. So it was not a too radical a transformation. And for me though, Batu, it was a little bit of like, honestly, I wasn't quite sure what, so I'm going to just do the safer thing, and I'll learn something. I'll get consulting skills, and it doesn't hurt to have yet another, but you can go through life just getting the imprimatur of the next institution and never really resonating with the thing. And I used to call it my chicken little problem. I used to say like, I'm just wandering around till the thing comes and hits me on the head. And sorry about chicken little. And fortunately it did, but it was just a conservative, and it was not a hard choice. McKinsey, a great place, right? And so it was pretty easy, and it was in San Francisco. And so a lot of good reasons to do it too.
This is an interesting choice point for you, Batu. The AI or McKinsey, either way, gosh, what are you thinking about the AI? You guys are a little more advanced than we were in the internet in terms of experience. We didn't have the internet the entire time. We had a little tiny thing called Mosaic, which became Netscape and became, I think, AOL eventually. But Batu, you guys just slightly more with AI. So what's attracting you about AI?
I think, well, personally, AI is really like making my life easier, because previously when I had pictures to look at, I really like couldn't tell what it was because I have no sight at all. And I use my computer with a screen reader software. So that basically reads whatever's on the screen. But when it comes to pictures, it's basically useless. But now I can basically attach the picture to ChatGPT and say, hey, like, can you describe what's in this picture? And it's wonderful. Like for graphs, I just look back to the McKinsey slides that I was making. Like I would make the slides, but I have no idea if it would work or not. And I would have to like show them to someone to get their approval. But I feel like now if I could go back, I'd be even more productive. And then it's also a great time to be a student. Because now, like whatever question you may have, you can just go and ask to ChatGPT and it probably will give you a satisfying answer. The only thing I'm scared of is it might be dulling my intellectual thinking abilities because like probably like if I didn't have ChatGPT, I would have to like think hard and long about the questions. And now I have the option to give the questions to ChatGPT. Even if I give my own thinking and be like, hey, like, I think this is the answer, just that, like, that drafting process, that thinking process, I feel like it's becoming faster, but I don't know. I feel like we'll need to see how the world evolves to really, like, understand the long-lasting impact of AI on student and education and broader institutions.
Quite a few of you guys have described that, Bruce. They were allowed to, well, verify they allowed to use ChatGPT through the degree, right? But
it's considered as a part of open internet. Although this year I heard that for the new class of 2026, they are changing to have the exams in person. We take exams in person the first quarter, and then the second quarter onwards, we were doing like open book, open internet, open ChatGPT.
Is that right? We spent that thing called Blue Books, and we had to use pen and answer them in the course. So Bruce, what are you guys seeing AI in the work that you do? How does that manifest?
I think it's manifesting as it manifests for other on the investing side, and I think in terms of due diligence, in terms of syndication, in terms of, and these are still rudimentary, I think, uses. On the kind of social services side, I think it's early on. I think like the real impact is kind of yet to be felt, but it will be felt in every dimension of life. And, on the philanthropic side, a lot of the philanthropy we do, even as a lot of it's around equity in life, but it's around market development. Upstream research and policy and standard setting, and how do you create the conditions for sustainable markets to take all those markets are being, I think, profoundly affected. Like these are the development times of various products, goods, and services, and so. But I think we're still early in our use of it. I love it. I think it's the greatest thing. But it's a very personal. But boy, can you get an answer? And boy, and I totally hear what you're saying about you. Like I'm just dealing. But I fancy like. Yeah, but I'm really being thoughtful about my questions or whatever. I don't know. I also love it for like the whimsical things as well. I think it's a great life improver, even as I'm terrified as to like where this goes and its long-term implications. And I would say that, Batu, like, Catherine, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like when we were going to school, the mid-90s was like this truly innocent age. Like the Cold War was over. At the end of ideology, it was like the internet was just evolving. The world seemed to be becoming a better place. And that is not, I feel very anxious. And I have maybe since 9/11, but like with climate and with, the AI and political, I don't know, but like these are anxious, uncertain times. And it is a profoundly, we were cosseted in this, maybe we didn't feel like this, but it was a much more innocent.
So much more innocent, Bruce. And what's interesting, Batu and Bruce, so many of your classmates, many, many more seem to be going and saying, okay, AI, love it. Now, how do I use, and I think you are too, how do I use it for good? And so many are, I've been blown away, frankly, using AI, for example, one of your classmates is going to look at solving some of the problems with Medicare. Some of them are certainly going to use it in the environment and are doing those dual degrees over across the street with the environment. So you are looking at using AI. Tell us a little bit more about that if you go down that track, but I bet you're going to be there at some point.
Actually, so I don't have a technical background, and so
none of us did. Except for the technology club that I should have joined kids that used to meet in the cafeteria. What was I thinking?
I'll comment on the anxiousness point first. I fully agree with what Bruce is saying, and I I second that. I feel like one of the things that happened at GSP was that like that is all going on in the world, but I feel like we either like consciously or unconsciously create. I feel like we somehow create this like bubble of being at GSP, and so these discussions don't really come up during like all the classes or like the friend discussions because it's almost a way of like, I guess, I don't know why. Maybe it's because people are here from like every walk, every country, every ideology. At least personally, I feel like we're not having enough dialogue around that. But maybe it's because I also studied political science, even though I'm not really like doing politics. I still am interested in reading and learning about it. So that's probably a personal point. On the AI side, I feel like my broader, not problem, but issue, or like if I could do something, what I would want to do is so basically, when I care a lot about accessibility, and I feel like accessibility needs to be incorporated in the design of new tools and ideas from the beginning. Because if you try to do it later, it's like you are trying to patch something and it doesn't work as well. And so that's what happened with the internet. All of those websites were created, and we're still like spending time making them accessible, and it's always more difficult to make something accessible later on because you don't really build that with accessibility in mind. And so that's what I'd love to do with AI, is that make sure it's being built with thinking about the needs and the needs of the underrepresented communities, which who probably don't get a say in how these things are built. So that's my ask, or that's where my heart tells me to go.
Well, the way you described AI helping you already, being able to translate photos and pictures and graphics through words is pretty amazing. Yeah. So that
It'll only get better from here. Like once AI can have, like once it has a video sort of like feed that I can sort of like point at things and ask questions, it'll be amazing.
And that may be a channel that you'd go into. That's kind of a thought? Okay.
I would hope to, or like if I go work at McKinsey, I would try to build my expertise in tech and AI and then hopefully transition.
You might be in competition. I bet so many of your fellow students are like, well, I'm going into AI. But isn't AI an enabler? And Bruce, I'll go back to you. When we first graduated, one of our classmates started eBay. One of them, I think, discovered the Hotmail, the people in the garage. But it struck me that a lot of it was about building the infrastructure of the internet. Bruce, how did you see?
It was not the infrastructure. It was like varsitybooks.com. We were going to the students online. And so that was, and then later, because this is where we ended up, like, and then I went to a real technology startup, which was trying to do real technology. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was selling it. Yeah. So, but it was infrastructure. But yeah, you're right. A lot of it was infrastructure. It was Cisco systems and a lot thinking about like how we move this stuff around and packet switching and to make it all work. Yeah.
Cisco was 400 people. I had it was one of my projects in the organizational behavior. What was I thinking? It's
like Laura Hanafi and some other people went there, but where were you going? Cisco. Like, yeah.
What was that? So, okay. So the .com gotcha. Did it pick you up? And Batu, I don't, the history of the .com is it kind of went huge bubble. I remember Warren Buffett coming to our investment class in second year going, don't invest that. I need hard steel cap boots. You need to invest in those, and looking in the eyes of the leadership. And I mean, he waited until the internet and Microsoft, et cetera, were up at a certain level. But so Bruce, was 2000 integral in your change over to Washington?
No, it coincided. I had McKinsey to go to Washington, and considering I was working in administration came to so I was going to go back to the Bay Area, but there were a proliferation. Like anybody who graduated when we did had options to go to a .com company, which were not technology companies. It was, I think I had offers at 3 different pet.coms, like pets.com and petstore.com and pet group. everything was going to be intermediated by the internet. And it wasn't wrong. The timing was wrong, and things did get, and Amazon did most of it, um, but it was, and these were all companies without business models. They were clicks. I don't know if you remember, Ken, clicks were the thing. Like if you get people, you had no way to monetize all this. And in the end, of course, people figured all that out. And probably true for AI. I don't know how they're monetizing the tremendous expense, like in terms of infrastructure, in terms of data centers, in terms of power, in terms of everything else. Like when I ask it about Pokemon, and it goes hundreds of thousands of dollars in spending to get me an answer that my 6-year-old about who's stronger, Lugia or, you know.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, that's the interesting thing. What are the business models? And there was an author that wrote about 2 books, Life After TV and then Life After the Internet. Can't remember. It's fantastic. And he asked the same thing. And at the time he was focusing on blockchain, and he was saying it was going to be the death of the Google advertising model and now Facebook. So it'll be interesting, Batu, like, do you guys talk about what the business model of AI is?
We do, but I think it's still evolving. So I think the way people talk about it, or we talked about it in class, was that like when software was first invented, it was priced like you would probably like send it in disks, and you would charge just like per software. And then it became sort of like this, like, yeah, it became like a sort of a user or like seat-based pricing model. And then I guess with cloud, it sort of became like use-based. And with AI, so people are predicting it, they're going to find a way, but it's either going to be like, for example, for an AI agent who is helping with customer support, how many sort of like support requests do we help solve? And like there will be, I think people will get creative with the models, because imagine like if you employed 100 people to do your customer support before, and now if you are doing it with AI, you probably like, and as long as your costs are less or less than employing those 100 people, like you can charge somewhere in between that area. And I think people are still looking for that area and what that is. My understanding is that now that they're still building the infrastructure, the costs are high. People can't even charge that much. And so they still sort of going with that user-based charging model, which I guess we're familiar from paying for the chatbot tools.
I want to keep them on the subscription model. If they go advertising, I'm going to be so disappointed. Okay, but now, of course, I want to ask about the Clinton administration. How does that happen? And what are you doing?
Applied for and was awarded what they call a White House fellowship. Right again. So it was about 15 people in my class, and you spend a year in the administration. And I worked at the National Economic Council, and working on policy. And I had colleagues in my program were at Department of Defense and Treasury, and it's wonderful program. And actually, I did it with a colleague of mine from McKinsey at the same time. She applied, got to Stanford. He applied. We went together. Leila D'Souza. So Leila and I went together, and it was remarkable. And the idea is that you would go and then you would leave government and you go do what you did, but with some much better understanding of how policy gets made and government as a kind of a home, because we're often disconnected in business, particularly then. It was just like, there's that, and then there's us, and the two never meet. And it was wonderful, remarkable experience. I didn't stay in government. That was my one kind of foray into that, but it sure gave me a respect for people in government.
What? Tell me a little bit about that.
These are people, on the one hand, you think, White House, like ambition, and that's the thing that drives them, and it's prestige and everything. That is not untrue. But these are people who could be doing a lot of different things in the world and making a difference in a lot of different, and they come to this, sure, with a mix of motivations, but one of them is government can be such an enormously powerful agent for change. Enormously powerful in ways that the business can't do. I mean, business has its own power, but government is such a venue for change. And so just the respect and for the commitment to the job, and particularly, the White House was, it's kind of a place. And so, and people, put in the time, and that kind of engendered that kind of like, wow, you're really doing it.
What does a McKinsey do with the government?
McKinsey does not actually do consulting with the government because they used to. Back in 2018, they were having a new Ministry of Economy or Finance appointed, and he announced that he was going to work with McKinsey to like do a turnaround strategy for the economy, because those were sort of the years the economy started going down. And what happened was McKinsey basically like opened an office in Ankara, which is the capital. They hired like 40 people, and then there was huge, like a lot of media pieces on Turkey is handing over its economy to the Americans. And then they got so much bad press from that they Erdogan went on television and said, we don't need any consultants. We don't need anyone to tell us what to do. And so we're not going to work with any consultants from here on. And so since that day, they're not actually doing any work with any I guess, consulting company. In terms of stability, I think things are really, so basically I think in the year probably starting from 2015, but really like picking up in 2018, they started going against the orthodox economic policies, where they started believing that inflation was caused by high interest rates. And so even though inflation was high, they did not raise the inflation rates, which only resulted in losing the investor confidence and the foreign investor confidence. And so there was less demand for the Turkish currency, which was Turkish lira, and it just like spiraled out of control from there on. And they basically they also appointed people who weren't really experts in economics. And so inflation was crazy high, like 100%, 150%.
That's wheelbarrow time.
Yeah. And I think it resulted in sort of like really like, I guess, decreasing the number of people who were sort of in the mid-class category. And then it just created a huge gap between the people with low income and high income.
Yeah. And what's interesting, Batu, one of your classmates I just spoke with yesterday, he is from Saudi, and it'll be interesting because they're just at the point, I think, I'm watching it, where they have the opportunity to plan and strategize about how they're going to set up the government, and the power of the Stanford Harvard connection to design that is fantastic. So Bruce, like, you compare the Clinton time with now, I was just hearing inflation and the lack of expertise. Sorry. How does it affect your office? Like, how are you guys coping with the factors? Let's say the factors.
I think maybe the main factors right now for anybody, and for most of us, is uncertainty at large, and from a policy perspective. And that's whether you're thinking in terms of economy, which, like, what a tariff? No, yes, no. What, Jerome Powell, that's unsettling. I think certainty there, but also from a policy perspective as relates to the issues that we care about, sustainability, climate, racial justice, DEI for many organizations. That's how you're framing it. Like, what happens with all this, and what language you even use, what records you protect. And like, I never thought I'd be on Signal, but I'm on Signal. I think uncertainty more than anything else, which is always kind of a bugaboo for people in business. Like, just tell us what the rules are. Now, you may hate them, but tell us where this is going to end up.
Okay. Batu, are you returning to Turkey?
I'm actually planning to stay in the US. I think the main decision point that I have today is that the number of opportunities in the US are, I guess, there are more opportunities here than there would be in Turkey, in terms of industries, in terms of the dynamics. And so that is the main reason I'd like to stay. And then I feel like in the long term, I will probably want to move back home because that's where I grew up. Is that what you did as well?
Bruce,
Yeah.
What was your home? Where did you?
I was asking you actually.
Oh, me?
Australia, right?
Yeah. No, I was in Australia from 1990, moved as a 22-year-old. And as soon as my feet hit the ground, I was like, I'm staying. But my father was Army military. And speaking of what Bruce was, we lived in Germany actually for 4 years during the Cold War, including Berlin for 2 years. So in 1989, November 9th, when the wall came down, still get shivers. I still, honestly, I get shivers. And Bruce, some of the more adventurous of our classes, both in Harvard and Stanford graduates, had the bravery to go into Eastern Europe when that wall came down and really build up the financial infrastructure. Bruce, with the developing nations that you've worked in with, what's been, the most remarkable thing that you've seen?
After Peace Corps, most of my developing experience was on the there's so many ways in which we help. And in fact, in terms of disease, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of so many ways that U.S. assistance particularly is. And that's all remarkable. And I wish we were doing it. But I would say that we also helped in terms of the kind of business development stuff that we were doing and the economic development as a driver for good. And, you don't need, the most remarkable gains in kind of human history have been made in the last 25 years in terms of lifting people out of poverty, in terms of, advances against the treatable diseases, infectious disease, and helped by that was about 400 million people in China made their way from poverty to the middle class. And there was no development assistance. It was just the power of markets put to work to help people, give people a leg up and, unlocking capital and training and access to opportunity is a hugely motivating thing for most people. And for a long time, I had a picture on my desk in Peace Corps, and it was of this village leader in this little town in Ethiopia. I had this picture of this guy on my desk who we worked with them in this very small town. They were doing coffee in Ethiopia. And he was not the classic poster child for we got to help people in Africa. He was fierce. He had these fierce blue eyes and they just drill right through you. And this so on it. And any small village anywhere has these people. It's equal opportunities everywhere. And give those people a chance to do something on their own. Just give them tools and capital and just a modicum of some access to the education. And boy, the human potential is with the right kind of tools to get stuff done is powerful.
Again, DEI, USAID, Peace Corps is under challenge. But will some of the policies affect accessibility?
I think we just need to provide the infrastructure to all groups, that they have all the needed infrastructure, the training and the schooling and the curriculum to get there. And just we need to level the playing field. And if as long as we're doing that, my wish is that we won't need diversity quotas and the statement that all the corporations put in their website that we fully support DEI and all. I think you know what statement I'm talking about. My wish is that we make that disappear one day. That is just, it becomes part of the norm.
What you said, Batu, was looking after its citizens. What have you learned at Stanford besides on Tuesday night? What have you enjoyed about the Stanford 2 years? What are you going to miss?
I think I'm going to miss the convenience of having so many friends.
Yeah.
In the same sort of within 1 mile from each other, and just the freedom to text each other on a random day and say, hey, what are you doing? And if they're free, just meet up or be able to meet for lunch, coffee. I think I'm going to miss being close to everybody.
I just stay right there.
You still keep in touch with a group of men.
We do. We get together once a year, and it's been a little hard for me the last couple of years because I'm behind all these guys with child rearing, but we're fit but faithful to that. And we spent a lot of our second year, once a week, getting together and chatting and trying to get to know each other better and, establish some bonds that way. And it's really stood the test of time in a lovely, lovely way. And these are great guys. And you've seen kind of the arc of our lives, play out every year, get-togethers and real, spending quality time together when we get together. It's how is it going? Formally, how's it going? Your turn. How's it going? That kind of.
You passed the talking stick. But one of the things I reflect on is touchy-feely, which is people listening is the class, that really learn how to communicate with each other in group. Did you have the opportunity to go through that, Batu?
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you say? What'd you think?
I really liked it. I think it gave me a great perspective about what other people, I guess, how other people perceive me. Even though I might think that I have the self-awareness to like think about how I might be perceived, it's still from my point of view. And so I think it's one of those rare opportunities that you really get other people's point of views. And it's like not only, it's like 12 people's. And so it was really helpful.
Bruce, what do you remember besides the men's group? What did you take away? I can't remember the Black-Scholes equation, and I just used ChatGPT and all of the. Well, you would have known the fixed income. I love that. I love that. But do I remember it?
I don't. It wasn't. I do remember getting a broad exposure to the whole set of kind of parameters around business, which is good. It's a holistic. But it's not a vocational school. You don't go there to learn to be a business person. You learn to be just doing what you're doing. Or if you learn to be a finance person, it's either in finance or you're in academic finance. You get a PhD, but it was more just that broad kind of introduction. But then the relationships, I think, and the power of that. And you can use that. You can approach that sort of utilitarian, like what can I get from this? But not that. It's like. Relationships are still as we're on Zoom and everything else, they're the thing. And that's the thing that I don't know if I learned it there, but it was certainly reinforced there. And in my career, I'm not calculating about relationships, but like I spend time with people because I like it. And like breakfast or the lunch or the how are you doing or the thing that have no particular purpose except for the relationship itself. And maybe doesn't, but it makes for a richer life.
Question for you, Batu, that I didn't ask was in terms of blindness. How many blind people have gone to Stanford Business School?
I actually do not know, and I don't know if I don't think there are many. And so I am extremely thankful to be able to be here and then be present. And I hope, and this is one of my, I guess one of the things I was trying to do while I was at GSB was that I'd love to make sure that there are others after me. And so we founded a disability club here, and it's been, I guess, I hope it to be part of my gift to the school, and I hope it will be sustainable when I leave as well. And so I hope there will be many more, and we'll start counting.
Batu, I asked ChatGPT how many blind students have gone to Stanford GSB, and it didn't say, but there are two notable ones. One, Dave Power from 1980, and one, Batu Demir.
I'll need to find him and meet him.
Yeah. Okay, so drawing the conversation to a close, what recommendation would you give for this generation?
I'd kind of put that in the category of like the timeless truths that are independent of AI or the internet or anything, or Batu, even your next choice. Or it is like at some junctures, just try to be purposeful about living and about the choices you make, and find opportunities to reflect and check in with yourself. And not you, Batu, but just we need to do that because it goes by pretty fast. And so make sure you're checking yourself. Like, is this the life I want to be living? And have some notion of what that life looks like in its whole sense, not just to make the money and do the thing, but like, what do I want on my tombstone? How do I want this to go? And then check purposeful, because boy, it goes by fast.
It goes so fast. And Batu, part of the reason I've done this podcast is, what do you want us to know? What do you want the 60-year-old person to know and to focus on?
It's difficult to say, but I feel like I think even though we're saying that there's probably the key thing I feel like we have been talking about with my friends is that like people are now looking for, like, I guess it's in line with Bruce's advice too, because we're looking for purpose and meaning, and it shows up in different ways. And so like people are looking for community. I think my generation sometimes hides that like purpose and meaning behind other things. So like sometimes they say they're looking for community. Sometimes they're saying they're looking for a better job. But I think we all are looking for purpose and meaning, and it's difficult to find. And so if your generation can help us find that purpose and meaning, which I know is very difficult, we would really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining us. For more insights and information, visit my website at katherinemclennan.com. That's spelled KATHARINEMCLENNAN.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the series so you know when the next episode will be as we continue exchanging wisdom, connecting past, present, and future through the perspectives of Stanford MBA graduates of 1995 and 2025.